Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Tinaglia.
Here.
Trustee Dunnington. Trustee Schwingbeck.
Here.
Trustee LaBedz.
Here.
Trustee Baldino. Trustee Grasse.
Here.
Trustee Bertucci.
Here.
Trustee Shirley. President Hayes.
Here. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes, and we have two sets to approve tonight. The first is from our committee of the whole meeting from June 18, 2024. Any changes or passes?
I'll move to approve the Committee of the Whole minutes from June 18th, 2024.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Grasse, seconded by Trustee LaBedz. Any questions or comments from the board or from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Next are the village board meeting minutes from that same evening, June 18, 2024. I assume no changes or passes. Is there a motion?
I would move that we approve the village board minutes from June 18th, 2024.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Schwingbeck, seconded by Trustee LaBedz. If no further questions or comments from the board or the audience, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Next, we move on to the approval of the accounts payable, and I call on Trustee Bertucci.
Mayor, I'll move to approve the warrant register for the check date June 30th, 2024 in the amount of $3,346,820.71.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Bertucci, seconded by Trustee Tinaglia. Any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee Bertucci.
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia.
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck.
Yes.
Trustee Grasse.
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz.
Yes.
President Hayes.
Yes. Well, next, under recognitions and presentations, we have a very special promotion this evening of Officer Stephen Klopak from police officer to sergeant within the Arlington Heights Police Department. And so, Officer Klopak, if you'd join me up front. Let me just introduce you to the audience before I make it official. Officer Stephen Klopak began his career with the Arlington Heights Police Department in 2021. After serving as a police officer with the Evanston Police Department for 11 and a half years. He received a Bachelor of Science degree in business from Western Illinois University. During his tenure with the city of Evanston, he served as a patrol officer, Special Operations Group, narcotics detective, and general investigations detective. Also, he was an investigator with the North Regional Major Crimes Task Force. While with the Village of Arlington Heights, Steve has served as a patrol officer and a general case detective in the Criminal Investigation Bureau. His ancillary duties have included firearms instructor, use of force instructor, and one of the lead instructors with the department's training program. In his career, Steve has been the recipient of numerous letters of appreciation, departmental commendations, unit citations, and distinguished performance citations while with the Evanston Police Department and the Arlington Heights Police Department. When not at work, Steve spends his time with his wife, Erin, and their three children, Maggie, Ben, and Shane. So now let's go ahead and make it official. And Officer Klopak, if you'd raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and state your full name, having been appointed to the office of Police Sergeant in the Village of Arlington Heights, in the County of Cook, do solemnly swear and affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties according to the best of my ability. Congratulations, Sergeant Klopak.
Don't hurt him.
Come on forward. Think they got something else here? Let's take a picture before you sit down. Sure, please, come on up. Whoever wants to come up.
Get in there, get in there. It's a nice picture.
All right, let me get in there on one. Okay, one more duty for you, Sergeant Klopak. You have to say a few words.
All right. When I came to Arlington Heights 3.5 years ago, it was a very much of a leap of faith. But I reminded myself always to stay humble and stay optimistic throughout my career here, and I felt as though that would continue my success with Arlington Heights. But I know that my success here is not something that's done as an individual. The team behind me is really who is the reason why I'm here today and who I am today. First, just thank you very much to Mayor, Village Manager, to Police and Fire Commission, Chief Pecora, Administration. Thank you so much for this opportunity for me to further my career with Arlington. I'm truly blessed to be part of just that department. Secondly, those here that I worked with at Evanston. If it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be the police officer I am today. And the knowledge, experience, and memories I have there are better than anything I could ever have. Arlington Heights, you guys brought me in with open arms, and I'm extremely humble and appreciative of how you took the old guy in and brought him as a new guy, and it was awesome. And then lastly, my rock, my family, you guys are amazing. And thank you for being there. You guys are unconditional support and love for me, and thank you. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you so much.
I couldn't say it any better than Steve just did about the team of folks that have supported him over the years, including his family, and the officers from the Evanston Department and the Arlington Heights Department. So we thank all of our uniform safety personnel for all the great work that they do for keeping our communities safe. So thank you all for being here this evening, and again, congratulations to our newest sergeant and his family. And you're free to leave at this time, unless you want to stay for a very exciting board meeting.
You don't want to stay.
All right, there are no other recognitions and presentations, so we'll move on to citizens to be heard. And I have no blue cards, is that right, Becky?
That's correct.
All right, are there any members of the audience who wish to address the board on items not on the agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll close the citizens to be heard portion of the agenda and move on to old business. And we do have a number of items to report out from our committee of the whole meeting from last week, June 24th, 2024, relating to budget and financial issues. And Mr. Recklass, can you just give us a 30-second elevator introduction to these motions, if you would?
Sure. At the last committee of the whole meeting, we had essentially two things that we discussed. One was our 5-year capital improvement program, and then the second is setting budget ceilings, which is a necessary step for the 2025 budget, where we essentially established the assumptions so that staff can begin developing the 2025 budget. And those motions are related to those discussions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Recklass. We do, again, have a few motions to report out, and so the first, I think, will be reported out by Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you, Mayor Hayes. I move tonight, as I did then, that the committee of the whole, or that the village board accept the 12-month period ending December 31st, 2023 annual financial report.
Second.
Motion by trustee LaBedz, seconded by trustee Grasse. Any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next motion was by trustee Bertucci.
Mayor, I will move as I did that evening at the committee of the whole meeting to recommend to the village board that the board approve the proposed 2025-2029 capital improvement program, and that the first year of the program totaling $49,803,600 be incorporated into the village's proposed 2025 budget.
Second.
Motion by trustee Bertucci, seconded by trustee Schwingbeck. Any questions or comments from the board or the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And final motion from that discussion was by trustee LaBedz.
Thank you, Mayor Hayes. I move now, as I did then, that the committee of the whole recommend to the village board that the board approve the 2025 budget ceilings of $92,912,100 for the general fund and $30,076,200 for the water and sewer fund.
Second.
Motion by trustee LaBedz, seconded by trustee Tinaglia. Any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, thank you again to Tom and your staff and Mr. Recklaus and everyone involved in getting us to this point in the budget process. Still a ways to go before we approve a final budget, but we appreciate all the hard work to this point, so thank you. We have one other motion to report out. That was from our committee of the whole meeting from earlier this evening, and I would call on trustee Grasse.
Thank you, Mayor. I move now, as I did earlier this evening, to recommend to the Liquor Commissioner the issuance of a Class B and Class T liquor license to Amazon Retail LLC, doing business as Amazon Fresh, located at 325 East Palatine Road.
Second.
Motion by trustee Grasse, seconded by trustee Schwingbeck. Any questions or comments from the board or the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? One question we didn't ask you is, because it's out in the public now, when do you plan on opening?
We are very excited to open the store very soon.
Come forward if you would. I just have to make sure we get that on the record.
So the folks at home can hear you.
Yeah,
I'm very pleased to announce that we're going to be opening very, very soon.
well, I'm not quite sure what that means, but we're going to hold you to it.
At my word.
All right, Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, committee. Appreciate
All
your
right,
time.
thank you. Good luck to you.
He did say two varies, Mayor Hayes.
All right,
so-
all right. We'll have to look for the legal definition of that. All right. There is no other old business, and so we'll move on to the consent agenda. Any members of the board wish to remove an item on the consent agenda? Any members of the audience wish to remove an item on the consent agenda? Trustee Grasse?
Am I able, are we talking about consent legal also?
Oh, anything on consent?
Yes, I would like to remove B, C, and E, please,
All
from
right.
legal.
B, C, and E. All right, any other members of the board or the audience wish to remove an item, B, C, and E? Those shall be removed. If not, are there any members of the board who wish to vote no or pass on any remaining item on the consent agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the remaining items.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by trustee Tinaglia, seconded by trustee LaBedz. Roll call.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Bertucci?
Yes.
Trustee Grasse?
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. Let's move on then to new business, and we do have one item to consider under new business tonight. That's the request for a preliminary and final plat of subdivision to subdivide the property located at 419 South Pine Avenue into two lots with variations were required, but apparently not recommended by the Plan Commission. So we will ask the petitioner to come forward and introduce himself and tell us what he's looking to do here.
My name is Brian Kelly. I am looking to take two lots that are currently there and just redirect them. So right now they're currently going north and south, and I'd like to make them go east and west, where the frontage on them will be on Grove. I'm sorry, will be on Pine rather than Grove. Sorry, I was turned sideways. By by doing that, I won't have to ask for any variances. The way it is currently right now, the corner lot doesn't have enough frontage width, so a variance would have had to have been asked for. By me rearranging the lots or redimensioning them, however you'd like to put it, there's no variances needed within the zoning that is currently there and in place. And I think it fits better too with, I could build a better house. I have more frontage to build a better house to do it that way. And that's basically it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Perkins?
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So as the petitioner mentioned, they are seeking preliminary and final platted subdivision tonight. And the Plan Commission did recommend one variation that I'll talk about. That was not originally requested, but they did recommend a variation from the subdivision code to not install the sidewalks, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So this is the site at the southeast corner of Pine and Grove. There are two lots. The lot on the corner, the lots run north-south. The corner lot does not meet the current requirements. In the past, we've had proposals for 3-lot subdivisions that haven't really fit in this area. We've had some townhome development that doesn't meet the requirements of the comprehensive plan. So this 2-lot subdivision, it does exceed all of the requirements for lot width and lot area. And this is the exhibit showing the wider lots running west-east as opposed to north-south. So the Plan Commission talked about the subdivision, the sidewalk requirements in the subdivision. So there are 2 provisions. There's Chapter 29 that requires a sidewalk, and then the village has a policy that says sidewalks, actually says sidewalks with the subdivision have to be provided, but then it says sidewalks in an area where there are no sidewalks do not need to be provided. So that they kind of conflict with each other a little bit. So after discussion, the Plan Commission recommended, a variation for the sidewalks. We consulted with Public Works and Engineering. We agree with that. We did have some suggested changes or conditions. One, just for pedestrian safety, that the petitioner install the ADA ramps around to complete the corner, but not along the frontage of Grove and not along the frontage of Pine. And then that they enter into a reimbursement agreement that they would pay the village for the cost of installing those sidewalks if the village ever did install sidewalks in Scarsdale or Scarsdale Estates, which is highly unlikely. This is the exhibit showing the ADA ramps just to complete and allow a pedestrian that's coming from Arlington Heights Road, where there are sidewalks up to Pine, or south from Sigwalt to Grove, so they could complete the intersection, get across. So with that, staff would concur with the Plan Commission's recommendation with these 2 additional recommended conditions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Perkins. Questions from the board? Trustee Bertucci.
So I just want to be clear on the sidewalk issue, and I understand what you're saying, and I also did read the Plan Commission minutes. And based on the rest of the neighborhood, so if I'm understanding, if there were sidewalks put in, they'd all, because nobody else has sidewalks, they'd kind of be sidewalks to nowhere.
That's correct.
Okay, well then, that very much makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you very much. And I am supportive of this as well as the no sidewalk thing, but I still, I just want to be clear. So there's going to be 4 wheelchair accessible ramps, the ones that were in yellow?
Yes, there's already one existing in the northwest corner, and then
Okay.
they will install the areas highlighted in yellow that were already shown on their engineering plan, but they would then not install the rest of this sidewalk south and east.
So that'll just kind of taper into grass? Is that kind of
Yes.
how it's going to work?
Yes, so anybody, kind of walking south from Sigwalt, if they were coming across here, they could cross, safely here, but then the sidewalk would end.
So there'll be sort of sidewalk in just that little,
Just the corner at
The
the
corner.
intersection, correct?
okay. I just want to be sure I understood. Thank you.
In relation to that, Charles, do we have that condition existing anywhere else in the village?
I'm sure we do. I can't say specifically where.
I can.
Okay, Trustee Grasse?
From running south of me, so it would be west of Arlington Heights Road, maybe around Rockwell area. There are a couple of corners that just have this with no sidewalks. I think one corner in particular.
What I'm wondering is, have there been any problems that have come to light as a result of that? I don't know what it would be, trip and fall, perhaps, or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the intent of, I don't know about that, whether we've had any issues, but the intent here would be anybody who had an accessibility impairment could actually get to the other side of the street and not have to traverse a curb to get to safety. That's the purpose of the recommending completing the 4 corners. I don't know if we've had issues in other situations.
So what I'm concerned about is if that concrete stays and the soft dirt and grass around it recedes, then you've got a potential trip hazard. And so whose responsibility? It's the property owner's responsibility to maintain that area, or the village?
It would be the villages, it would be within the village right of way. So it would be the village's responsibility if there was some settling, a year down the road or 2 years down the road to go in and make restoration.
Okay, so I would just ask that we monitor those situations to make sure that no dangerous situation becomes apparent. Okay. All right, any other questions from the board? Trustee Schwingbeck.
Thank you, Mayor. Charles, not to stay on the subject of this, but I spend a lot of time over there because it's the neighborhood I live in. It just seems, can you go back to that photo that you had? There's already a sidewalk over by Northwest Metalcraft by the parking lot that when you're coming southbound, right there, the sidewalk just disappears as you're going south into the grass. Looking at your picture where you had it highlighted, I understand what you're trying to do where people coming eastbound down, go back, yeah, there. Folks coming eastbound can, cross over to the other side of the street, but it just seems that when you've got that on that southeast corner, when you've got that little area there that just ends into grass, don't you think people could cross safely on either side of Grove than to get over to Pine on the north side and not have that little sidewalk there that's just confusing?
I mean, that certainly it would be leaving it as the existing condition is the prerogative. Yes, that the board could decide that is a better solution.
Yeah, because all they're doing there is you're using those ADA ramps and that little tiny 90-degree sidewalk to get over onto the east side of Pine on the north side of Grove. They could access that from the west side too. It just seems like we're asking the petitioner to put a sidewalk in there that, I agree, it goes nowhere.
The board could elect to not include that added condition, and I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer on this. I think it's whatever is the board feels most comfortable with.
Right.
Trustee LaBedz first.
Thank you. So, but I can't tell from here if there are accessible ramps in the other corner. It looks like one of them might be crossing Pine at the northwest, but I'm not sure the others are. I guess that my point being that I would, if somebody is in a wheelchair, say a motorized wheelchair or something like that, you want to, if they may have to come south down on the east side of Pine and then cross over at the south end of Grove to continue to go west.
Yeah, so to answer your question, these ramps here look
Right.
like they go to the curb, and I don't know whether they meet our full ADA requirements right now, but it's hard to tell from
Yeah.
this aerial. The same with on the southwest leg.
Because that, for me, would be a reason to go ahead and have them, so that someone coming south from the north of Grove could safely go to the east.
Trustee Grasse.
Thank you. I know it seems a little odd with not having sidewalks elsewhere, but I would be in support of continuing this for the sole reason of just having a safe place to get off the street for people who may not be able to move too quickly. Even in wintertime, I know there are a number of different properties that people frequent at nighttime right in the area and crossing the street if a snowplow's coming through, just to be able to get safely off the street if you can't move too quickly. So I would still support having that access in that corner, even though it might seem not to be usable. I think it's a safe place to be for people who may need a little more time to get off the street.
Okay, anything further from the board?
Yeah, I did have a couple other questions. So, Charles, on Pine, when you go from Grove south on that stretch of the property there that's directly behind Northwest Metalcraft, 425 Pine, that's right where that sewer is. On your, I think number 20, it says, correct the misalignment of the curb at the southern limits of the proposed subdivision. Are you gonna be widening Pine Street to straighten that curb out running all along the 419 property there? Because when the curb by 425 where that sewer pipe is, it then juts out. So is that what you're talking about, where they have to be careful of that light post there, but are you moving the street so that it's lining up?
I think they covered it, said yes.
There's like a
know if they're
grove
moving
of
the
trees are there.
Yeah, there's trees there, and that little section of South Pine that's in front of their property, right at the corner of 425. 425, 427, that street is all in line with one another. And then when you get over to 419, it juts out. So are they gonna back that curb up so that the street is all in line with one another? Was that the game plan?
I'm looking at the engineering plan. It's hard to tell at this scale, but it looks like there's a slight transition, but where they're removing some curb for the new driveways, and then they're removing the driveway apron on the house to the south to access the combined sewer at that location. But it doesn't look like they're removing all of the curb along there going north.
So that little piece of property there where 419 is, from 425, and then when you cross over Grove going north to 327, the street there is a little wider. So it's just that section by 419 where it juts out and is a smaller street.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that they're widening the street based on this plan.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I might be able to help. I happen to
Yeah, they are
drive
vertical
past there. I happen to drive past there on the way here.
Yeah,
And
but
Tom,
this is
I'm
the
wondering, what I found was it wasn't necessarily so much the curb and the streeting, but those trees kind of hung over and created a situation where I did have to kind of like go, like what you're talking about. But I think it was more the foliage and the trees and the
It's the
bushes.
curb.
Oh,
The
the curb actually does
The curb goes
too?
around the sewer
Oh, okay.
and then comes back out.
Got
I
it.
didn't know if you were gonna take the opportunity with the development of these two lots to have the street lined up.
It improves the transition at that sewer area, but it doesn't shift the whole curb line, along the property and widen the street, but improves the transition by where it kind of does that little jog in the street that you're referring to.
And then the only other question I had is in 17B, they say the structure is located in the concrete driveway of 425. The driveway shall be removed and replaced from the curb cut. Are you implying that the property at 425 is gonna have to have some, what are you saying there?
The driveway apron in the public right-of-way would have to be removed to access the sewer at that location.
Okay.
And then completely rebuilt and poured back at the expense of the petitioner. It would not be the expense of that homeowner to the south.
Okay, all right, that's all I have, thank you.
All right, anything further from the board? Trustee LaBedz?
Thank you. Mr. Kelly, I do have one question. Were you able to look at the existing trees on the property? And are you able to retain any of the existing trees based on your building plans?
Well, whatever we can that is of good species and good health, we will keep. That's not in the way of the footprint or the driveway or where a rear patio would go, excuse me. I don't know if there's anything of that, the substance is that good, you know, of what's there. But anything that we can, we will definitely try to keep. We always try to. And plus, we're going to be doing landscaping afterwards and putting parkway trees in and everything else too. So to answer your question, anything that's of good health and that is not like an invasive species, it's a good species of trees, we'll definitely do our very best to keep.
So you haven't gotten as far along as actually examining the trees?
I mean, I've
with the
looked at
land.
them. Most of them are growing sideways. Some of them are in between mine and the 425 residents. And they've asked me, like, how are we going to handle the trees? Because they want to kind of trim all theirs up and get rid of some too. But they're like, maybe we'll just wait till you do your development because we know you're going to take trees down. Again, to answer that question, there's a lot going on the south property line and then on the east property line of the overall two lots. And most of that stuff is going to be cleared. None of it that I could see is of that good of a species or anything else. But I have an arborist. I'll definitely have someone come out and look at everything before we do decide to take anything down. Anything that's good, we'll keep.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Right, anything further from the board? Anything from the audience? Mr. Reckles?
One thing I was just going to point out, I did pull up a relatively recent aerial photograph of the intersection, and look in the intersection of Grove and Pine there. You can go back to where it was before. That one's fine too. On the northwest corner, both of those legs appear to be relatively new. They have the tactile sensor, so and are relatively flat. They again, you know, I'm not an engineer, but they appear to have built in an era where they would be ADA compliant. The one on the southwest, however, does not appear to be in compliance. There is no tactile stop device, and the curb is not completely flush with the driveway. It looks like something that could be navigated, but not to our current standards. Eyeballing it, if that helps.
Okay, if nothing further, we do have a suggested motion that was on the dais, and so what's the will of the board?
I'll make a motion. I move to approve Plan Commission number 24-003, petition for preliminary and final plat of subdivision to subdivide the property into two lots with variation 1 and approval to the following conditions 1 through 8.
Sounds good.
Second.
Motion by trustee Grasse, seconded by trustee Tinaglia. Any further questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good luck to you, Mr. Kelly.
Okay. Do I get to comment on anything though? That's what I was kind of waiting till you guys were done talking.
Well, did you have an issue with respect to any of the conditions?
Well, I don't really have an issue, but like when the planning meeting was here and there were people that were also living in that neighborhood, the one thing they didn't really want is the sidewalks. I had the sidewalks on the original proposed engineering plan based upon the review and talking with the engineering department. But I don't know how they're going to feel about that little like right angle of sidewalk right there. It just, you know, it just basically, that was a response that we got from the planning board and from the people. So, I mean, I could do whatever you guys would like. So is that what you guys want then? Do you want that triangle or you want that right angle put in? Is that correct?
That's what the motion was.
Okay. And then also I have to what, put up the cash or put up a bond or money for the future of a sidewalk?
No, it's an agreement that you'd sign and then would be recorded on the property that any future owner of the property would reimburse the village for the cost of sidewalks if they were ever installed in the future.
Okay.
So you would not be installing them, you would not be paying for them.
Okay, I just would have to notify the buyers of the homes that that is something that is currently running with the property. Is that correct?
Correct, yes. We can share a sample with you as well.
I just want to get a little clarification on that. Okay, that's all.
Okay. Did we vote?
Yes,
I think you guys
Did
already
vote,
voted, so I
right.
was just trying to say something before, but that's okay.
No, I appreciate it.
Mayor, if I may just note,
Yeah,
the,
Mr.
the,
Passman.
the approval, resolution ordinance will be on your agenda in 2 weeks.
Okay.
The actual formal approval will be in 2 weeks.
Right. Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mr. Kelly. Right, there is no other new business, and so we'll move on then to the legal items that were removed. Mr. Eckles, going to start with item B.
Sure, all these issues, all these items are related, and so I'll give one explanation. What this relates to is the village's community addiction recovery effort, which is a joint effort by the police department, fire department, health and human services department of the village, as well as a couple of non-for-profits, Live for Lally and Brightside. There might be someone I'm missing. And the idea behind this is all of these agencies and departments encounter individuals who are suffering from addiction, and really to look at those interactions as opportunities to get those individuals into a treatment program. And there's a couple of different aspects to it. One, initially there had been funding for naloxone, which is a treatment for individuals who are experiencing an overdose. Our police officers, obviously our ambulances, have those. We also have a vending machine inside the lobby of our police department, so anyone can, no questions asked, get themselves materials for, it's kind of so they can safely treat those types of situations. The other thing is which is really the meat of the program, is through Live for Lally and Brightside, having there's a flyer where any individual who's suffering these things has a 24-hour hotline that can get them immediately kind of scheduled for a treatment process. And what we do is if the police department, fire department, or health and human services department encounters individuals who are experiencing addiction-related issues, we can give that referral right away. They can respond, they can call the 24-hour hotline number that Live for Lally runs and hopefully get someone when they need it, when they want it, into treatment, is the basic idea. The items that are before you tonight are related to a $150,000 grant the police department was able to get through the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority that will really help continue to fund this project for the next year. And I don't know if Chief is still here. Is there anything else, Chief or Deputy Chief, anything else I missed, or did I get that right?
You did the highlights. Well said.
All right. Happy to answer any questions
Okay,
y'all may
Trustee
have.
Grasse.
Oh, I just wanted these pulled off because this just shows the effort and the great work done by our staff to really bring forth some grants that are really going to make things better for our community. And I think it's important that we say these out loud. There's a lot of work and effort put into it, and I thank you. So I think it's important that the community just hears some of the things that you are able to bring in to help us.
Okay, thank you. Anything further from the board? Trustee LaBedz.
Yes, I have a quick question about the vending machine. Is it used? I mean, I figure you would know because if you have to replenish stuff.
Yeah, I keep a running total based on the coins that are put in the machine. So probably every other week, I go check to see how many coins have been inserted in the machine. And we do keep it stocked with both naloxone and fentanyl test strips. People can get strips to test their narcotics. So to date, after we started the program last year, I believe there's about 150 coins in there. So people have accessed quite a bit of naloxone. And our first batch of 50 fentanyl test strips, we went through that and we've replenished with another 50.
Oh, wow.
So it's being used quite frequently.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Okay. Anything further from the board? Anything from the audience on these? All right, we would need a motion for each one then. Would want to take item B? Go ahead, Trustee LaBedz.
I would move that we
Approve the resolution.
approve the resolution and acceptance of the USDA Urban and Community Forestry Inflation Reduction Act grant award and authorize the agreement between the Village of Arlington Heights and Green Latinos of Washington, D.C., who will manage the grant for USDA.
Second.
There's a motion by trustee LaBedz, seconded by trustee Grasse. Any further questions or comments from the board or the audience? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Grasse?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
Trustee Bertucci?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. Would like to take the next one.
Oh.
Trustee LaBedz, go ahead.
Okay, I'll be brave. I recommend that the village board approve the attached resolution accepting an Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority grant in the amount of $149,254 for the Village of Arlington Heights CARE Program and authorize the village manager to enter into an agreement with the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority of the state of Illinois.
Second.
Motion by trustee LaBedz, seconded by trustee Grasse. Any further questions or comments from the board or the audience? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Grasse?
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
Trustee Bertucci?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. Trustee LaBedz, you're on a roll.
3 for 3. Recommend that the village board approve the attached ordinance amending the annual budget of the Village of Arlington Heights for the purposes of expending awarded funds from the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority Community Law Enforcement Partnership Deflection Program grant, the CARE grant, in the amount of $75,600.
Second.
Mayor, if I may.
That was the second.
I just want to clarify, it's not a recommendation, you are moving approval
Oh,
of
I'm
this.
sorry. I'm just reading it off of
Yes.
the agenda. I'm
Should-
sorry. I would move all of that.
That's fair, thank you, trustee
Going to
LaBedz.
say the same thing. We have a motion and a second
Second.
by trustee Schwingbeck. Roll call.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
Trustee Bertucci?
Yes.
Trustee Grasse?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. All right, we're done with legal then. We'll move on to the report of the village manager.
Nothing further tonight.
All right. Under petitions and communications, I just wanted to say that we've had a very successful start to the Sounds of Summer season. Thanks Diana and Avis and all the support personnel who've been in charge of this. We've had great entertainment, great crowd, and the weather, for the most part, has cooperated. So really enjoyed the disco music last weekend. Having said that, we are not having Sounds of Summer this week because we have 4th of July celebrations. And so I would hope that everyone who would normally be at Sounds of Summer will be over at the main stage entertainment over at Recreation Park for Frontier Days, which begins on Wednesday and runs through Sunday evening. And don't forget the 4th of July parade this Thursday morning. The weather is looking more promising. And so hopefully we'll have a good morning, at least for the parade on the 4th of July. We are still looking for, Frontier Days is still looking for volunteers. And so even at this late hour, I'm sure they'd be very happy to hear from people who might be willing to volunteer 3 or 4 hours at least. And so please contact Frontier Days, Inc. at their website. And if you do have some free time in the next 5 days, starting Wednesday, they very much appreciate your help. So we look forward to seeing everybody out at Frontier Days over the 4th of July. If not, have a very safe and happy Independence Day. And we'll see you back here next time. So anything further from the board? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by trustee Bertucci, seconded by trustee LaBedz. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you all for joining us this evening.